So I finished listening back to Overly Dedicated. I like to, especially nowadays. I just like to listen to older albums sometimes. And I've done Kendrick re-listens over the past like 2-3 years a couple of times. Like I can't even tell you how many times I've spent like Damn, Mr. Morale, To Pimp a Butterfly. Honestly, I can't wait from the Good Kid, Mad City tape. I still love it. I just don't like it as quite as much as some of the later tapes, and some people won't agree with that, but that's just my opinion. But Overly Dedicated is one of those where it's like, I love that tape. I've loved that tape since I found out about it. I found out about it when it first came to streaming, 2016 ish, because it wasn't on there at first. Um, and it was a big part of my high school experience, but I hadn't listened to it in a while, and so I was door dashing and decided to turn it on while I'm dashing. Just gave it a spin, and I was like, damn. I mean, I know I like this tape, but I like it even more now. I like what I like with artists like Kendrick is you can definitely see that while they were trying to do the things that you eventually know them to have perfected later on in their career, you can hear how raw and young he was and inexperienced in 2010. And now it's 15 years later. Well, GNX came out last year, so 14 years down the road, and you hear something like GNX, or 12 years later, you hear something like Mr. Morale, and you look back at like Overly Dedicated, and you're like, see, this kid had it. He was going for it, and you can hear he's going for it, but you can hear the rawness in like a artist like him, Janae, Ab-Soul. One thing that I think is so unique about that is that it is a great tape. Don't mishear me, but it's just, if people feel like nowadays, if your first tape, second tape isn't on the level of like Good Kid, Mad City, then you're just not, you know what I'm saying? You're not worth checking out if you're not one of the artists that constantly put out tapes. So you either have to be one of the artists that kind of treat tapes almost like how Larry June says it, where like the music is product. So you almost have to either treat the music strictly like it's product, but if you try to keep it like it's music, the industry fans nowadays, like music fans and their appetite nowadays, is not quite tuned to allowing an artist to develop their sound and find where they're going. Like, for example, one of the younger artists that I like to listen to is Chris Patrick. And I think from his first album to his second album, you can see what his sound is. But, like, my opinion on his third album is, I don't know if I heard any as much growth as I would have liked to from a sound perspective. I think his subject matter is really good. But on his second album, I could tell he was trying to make more of a musical album. Like, it's like, okay, I'm focused on the music this time rather than just putting bars on the beat. Not to say that that's all his first album was. I don't want to reduce it down to that, but I think there was definitely a different approach, even if I can't quite get all the thoughts that I would need out on it, because this video isn't about Chris Patrick. But as a matter of fact, I need to write that down so I can talk about him. But you can definitely see that kind of progression with Kendrick, from the Kendrick Lamar Show to Overly Dedicated to Section 80, Good Kid, Mad City. Like, I always break up people's careers into like what I think are kind of their eras. And that's like the era for Kendrick. I think after that, it was just kind of like, I don't know if he had any differential era until maybe now. Like Mr. Morale till now, like, or when he came back on with the hillbilly stuff with Baby Keem until now, almost it's like a different kind of era for Kendrick. But I don't think he had an era since Good Kid, Mad City ended his first era, because to me his first era was more young Kendrick. People say backpack rap, but I don't hear that when I hear like overly dedicated. Like, he is really, the thing I love about Kendrick is he's only talking about his life. So you hear him talking about getting caught up in the streets with LA, and not necessarily getting caught up with it, but just like you can hear in the music his mindset of it being like, this is the stuff we grew up on, but this ain't the type of stuff that I'm trying to stick in. Like, I'm trying to get out of here. I'm more on the liberation from this. Like, you really hear it in Barbed Wire, where he's talking about, he goes from verse to verse and he talks about the struggles of like being poor, and then the struggles of making it out. I don't necessarily think he was talking from a rich man perspective, but like maybe, perhaps. But even if it's not a rich man, like even if it's just middle class, like he was talking about at the end of that verse, how the people are going to say you sold your soul to the Illuminati to make it out. Like, and how that's a struggle. That's a cage for people mentally. And then the lady at the end of the tracks asks him, have you broken out of the barbed wires? And he's like, not yet. And then it goes into, oh damn, what's the song after that? Hold on, let me pull it back up. It goes right into Average Joe. And it's like, okay, like, who is K Dot? A young nigga from Compton. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, he goes into that, and though, like, that song and HOC are kind of like showing his last bit of breaking free from it isn't necessarily all the things that he talked about before, because the middle portion of the album, or like the very beginning, not really the middle, the very beginning of it, like the first 4 tracks is the struggle he has with women. First 5 really, because opposite of the tracks. And then it's like that middle portion is like the rap part of it. It's him like finding an identity as a rapper, quote unquote street nigga. Like, that's why he's rapping all hard on Michael Jordan and he's talking on ROTC. And then Barbed Wire, Average Joe, HOC. It's like Barbed Wire is like him breaking free from the rest of that stuff. And then those last 3 songs are, this is the last hurdle that I need to get over. And then Cut You Off is cutting all of that off. And so by the end of it, you see all the things that like he struggles with, and the things that he's cutting off in order to, like he says, grow closer, like to get closer to his end goal of who he wants to be, to get closer to God, to get closer to finding himself. You know what I mean? And it's this wonderful album made by this early 20-year-old kid, and you see like a very careful attention to detail, to track placement. You see a story being told in the way the music flows. Like, it's all rudimentary. It's all kind of simplistic, but you'll miss it if you're not paying attention to it. You'll miss it if you're not thinking about it. If you're just turning this on and saying, what do the music sound like, my nigga? I'm trying to turn up, or I'm trying to listen to something that's slow. Or if you just listening for that, if you're not listening to it as an album, as it's being presented to you, and what he's trying to say with it, then you're gonna miss it. But you don't have to like overly dissect it, because this isn't like it's not a deep album. I don't think most of Kendrick's music is as deep as people try to portray. I think he's very cookie cutter, and like not cookie cutter in a bad way, but like he is very concise and clear about what he's trying to say about his life and about his mental state at the time. And that's what I love about him, because that's all of his albums. All of his albums are about his life. And I like that Overly Dedicated feels Like Overly Dedicated and Mr. Morale feel the most personal out of his tapes to me, because I really feel like he wrote those in the moment. Like I feel like Good Kid, Mad City was more of like a reflection, and some of the stuff he was going through currently, but it was more so of a reflection. I think To Pimp a Butterfly was like that too. To Pimp a Butterfly was about the stuff like his journey, however long it had been from when he got recognized for Good Kid, Mad City until when he put it out, when he put that next album out. So it was about a 2-year time span, year and a half time span from when he would have wrote and produced it all. Those 3 albums are like the most personal. Not saying that Damn and Good Kid, Mad City or Section 80 aren't. I'm just saying that you can clearly tell he wrote those about the stuff he was just going through. Like those are albums about what he just went through. And I think that's why I have Mr. Morale and To Pimp a Butterfly as my 2 top favorites. And while I have, like, if I'm ranking them, because it's hard to rank albums, but I'm just saying like favorites, right? I have OD probably under Good Kid, Mad City and Damn, but only because it's like he wasn't quite refined yet. Like he was very much still tweaking stuff. I just love the fact that on Michael Jordan with Schoolboy Q and on P&P 1.5 with Ab Soul, like especially Ab Soul part at the end, like once the beat switches, you can really hear how raw and how young they were and how early in like their artist development they were there. And I like that 15 years later, because I can go back and listen to it and I can appreciate the amount of work that I can tell went into crafting who they are today 15 years later. And I would hope that music fans would find an appreciation for that, because part of what you want to see in an artist, especially if you want the next generation of superstars to come about, is not only do they have to produce personal albums, but they also have to grow over time. Like you got to be invested in their journey. I don't, like Kendrick Lamar doesn't become who he became. Like part of the reason the Super Bowl thing is so dope is because it's like you've watched him his entire career, dog. Like Kendrick, like this came out in 2010. I was 9 years old when this came out. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have this. I didn't find out about Kendrick until Good Kid, Mad City. But shit, I was only 12 when that happened. So from 12 years old until now, I'm 23 going on 24, I've been listening to Kendrick Lamar, watching his career. I've wrote papers about him for English class. You know what I'm saying? I've had so many different experiences that I've gone through personally while this has been going on. You know what I mean? And so like I can relate the music to part of my life, but being able to understand how the music connects to his, and like listening to the experiences that he's gone through as each of these albums have came about, and being able to say that you were a fan and knew about those albums when they came out for an entire 10-year journey. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those things that is just so dope to experience, and like you're never going to experience it if you don't give the artist that room to be able to do that. And that's why Kendrick says on Mr. Morale, where he's like on N95, where he's like, you know, the industry killed the creatives. You know what I'm saying? Like he says that because he grew up in an era where it was like you could put out Overly Dedicated and grow from there. Like we were in an era back then where Tyler the Creator and Earl Sweatshirt and them could come out with the kind of music that they were coming out with and grow as artists like over the course of that period of time. And like you see it, and it's like, damn, like what if we would have never given them that space though? What if we would have just wrote them off as the trashy teenagers that say stuff that's outlandish, and like what if we would have wrote them off? You know what I mean? And a lot of people did, but like their fan base stuck with them over the course of time, and now they are who they are. So I think that's what Overly Dedicated reminded me to remember. It's like, okay, with these young artists, stick through them through their journey. and just hope that the industry doesn't write them off or things don't get so bad for them financially that they can't um, continue to be allowed to grow. You see that with like a young artist like Leon Thomas, younger artist like Leon Thomas, for example, like his entire uh, um, like walk journey through the industry, where it's like you see him on Victorious, you can tell he has talent because of his performances on there, and then you hear about all the people and all the songs that you like that he's written. Then you go back and listen to his own works, and then now he puts out an album, and like people on Twitter are really discussing whether or not they feel like he's the face of R&B or male R&B right now. And it's like, wow, you got to watch that entire journey from 15 years ago, dude, when bro was on Victorious. Like that's the dope part about it, and Overly Dedicated reminded me of that, especially hearing Ab-Soul's verse on PNP 1.5 and My Baby Janae on Growing Apart. It's just, you see their growth, and it's awesome. It's dope. It's dope. I like it, and I think that's a part of music that I don't think it's necessarily missing. I just think it's one of those things where it's like you have to live out 15 years and keep listening to people to see it happen. You know what I mean? So like, if you're gonna write somebody off after their second album, you know what I mean? Like, or if they drop one album that you don't like, two albums that you don't like, and you just write them off, and it's, we're never gonna listen to you again, we're never gonna fuck with you again, then people, of course, they're gonna get out of music, bro. Of course they are. So I like it. I love this album. It was very good. I listened to it. I just wanted to come and talk about it. Yeah, that's just my thoughts. Thank y'all for watching. Peace.